All right, let's see. Okay, I'm trying to see if I can get her in here. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to get her on. Anyway, I'm Alexis Faye. We're gonna be doing an interview, like seminar type of thing with Rachel D. She's a shadow work life coach. I'm trying to get her in here though. Let's see. All right. My bad, y'all. What was that? Am I just not? Oh, y'all. Okay, I see. There it is. There it is. Okay.
All right. I do
Rachel
it from my
D.
phone instead of my computer. That's what it was. That's why I couldn't get on
Okay.
at first.
Okay. I thought I was doing something wrong. Okay. We
Can you hear
here.
me
Rachel
okay?
D. Yeah, I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, perfect.
All right. All right. So this is Rachel D. She's a shadow work life coach. I've heard so much about her, y'all. I was actually put onto her by somebody else. So I heard through the grapevine, and so I'm happy to dig your brain a little bit.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, so I guess we're gonna start with while we're here. Exactly what is shadow work? Can you tell us what shadow work is?
Yeah, so I'll start with saying that it started by a psychoanalyst by the name of Carl Jung. And so I know a lot of people, we hear the term shadow work in the spiritual community, but it actually has its roots in psychology. And so essentially, shadow work is a work that we do to embrace our full selves, including what we call the shadows. So shadows are the things that we have learned to suppress or repress about ourselves. It's the things that our ego hides, does not want the world to see. These are things that we have learned are not acceptable by certain people, certain circles, and so we hide them from the world either consciously or subconsciously. And so when we do shadow work, we are uncovering those things and embracing those things and accepting all those things about ourselves.
Right, and I feel like it's so many things that affect us that we don't even realize. And when you start really peeling back those layers and stuff, you're like, oh wow, like I didn't even know. Like, so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it gets intense.
Yes,
So
yes, it can, yeah.
yeah, we always hear about like healing your inner child and things like that. Is that associated with shadow work?
For me, it's essential for shadow work, especially when you're starting shadow work. I always start my clients there because it's where we first learned
Mm-hmm.
to hide certain things about ourselves. That's where it
Right.
all begins. Where shadow
Mm-hmm.
work is the idea of unlearning all of this stuff that
Mm-hmm.
has that is currently impacting us negatively. We're unlearning that and reprogramming our minds, right? So we have to start where the programming first started.
Right. Right.
That's in
That's
childhood. And so we have to deal with some of the things, some of the wounds that we encountered in childhood, because that's
Right.
where some of our shadows come from. Not
Yeah.
all of them,
Yeah.
but a lot of them that impact us now as adults started in childhood.
Mhm.
So
And
it's
I
almost, for me, it's essential when we're starting shadow work, we're going way
yeah.
back. We're not starting at 25, 35, 55. We're starting at, from the very
Right, for
beginning when you got
sure.
here.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot
Okay,
of our triggers
so
that we have as adults now come from experiences from childhood. So
oh
yeah, we have
yeah,
to
for
start there.
sure, for sure. It's a lot of things that like even like trying to impress people and think like that started, because when we're young, we don't care about what our shoes look like or our clothes. Like we don't care about that stuff. That's like
Mm-mm.
that's learned behavior. Like
It
you said,
is.
programming. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it definitely makes sense to start right. That's the first step, probably. Yeah. So
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of unlearning all this behavior that is not working well for us now. Like, it may have been something that we learned to survive then, but as an adult now, where we are
mhm.
now, 25, 35, 85, it's not helping us now. So we have to
Right.
unlearn that and
Uh-huh.
relearn something else to help us
Right.
um, function properly
Mhm.
and accept ourselves fully now.
Mhm. Because it's affecting not only you but people around you too, and your kids,
Mm-hmm.
everybody, everybody. So,
Yep.
I know you said earlier that shadow work started with psychology. So
Mm-hmm.
how is this related spiritually to spirituality?
Right. So we're spiritual beings having a human experience, right? And so
Mhm.
the human experience part comes in when we're talking about all the conditioning I talked about a few minutes ago. As we grow up, we learn behaviors, how to, act, how to
Mhm.
perform in society. So the more conditioning that that gets placed on us, it's hard for us to tap into our true selves, our spiritual selves, because we're functioning under all this conditioning. And so
Right.
we deal with the psychology part of it, right? The mental aspects of this, and do the mental work to get
Mhm.
all of this stuff off of us.
Mhm.
Then we become we can better tap into who we are and who we've always been, and tap
Right.
into source, and we are able to better relate to others on a spiritual
Mhm.
level. So that's kind of how shadow work works into spirituality. It helps us to get kind of sort through all of that stuff, all those layers
Yeah.
of conditioning of how we're
Yeah.
told we're supposed to be,
Yeah.
right? Rather than who we are.
Mhm. Mhm. And I don't know. Like I said, it just always blows my mind, like the things that can come up. Like it's just I don't know. Like it's just be little things, like just the craziest things that like probably didn't even bother you at the time when it happened. Almost like it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. But it's really getting to
Mm-hmm.
know yourself. Know yourself. I always
It's
think of Bad
definitely
Lady.
shadow
That's
work is
always.
definitely, I tell people, it's definitely the self-awareness journey. And that's
Mhm.
how we're getting to know
Oh yeah.
ourselves better. And when we
It's
learn
step
ourselves better, we can love ourselves better, right?
Yeah, that's step one. I feel like it's step one in spirituality, honestly. If you ask me, it's step
Mm-hmm.
one.
Mm-hmm.
If you want
That's
to
me.
do
I know if people want
anything,
to
yeah.
jump into divination and they
Yeah.
want to they want
Mm.
to do spell work and all this kind of thing, and that's cool. And I'm
Mm.
not knocking any of that. But if you're not
Right,
addressing
no.
your own shit, your own stuff,
Right.
you
Yeah,
dive into
that's
something that
step
you were
one.
not prepared for,
Right.
and
Yeah,
start
cause
here.
right, cause the universe gonna make you learn. It's gonna make you address some shadows eventually.
Listen,
Anyway, anyway,
listen.
'cause that be how you learn the lessons the hard way.
Yes, and that's what I tell people all the time. I was like, my favorite phrase is the universe will either nudge you or drag you. You
Right.
decide. You
You
get to
ain't
pick,
lying.
because it'll kind of tap you and nudge and say, "Hey, have you looked at this part of you? Have you examined this part of you? Have you observed? Are you
Hmm.
seeing this? Are you seeing
Yep.
this?" And then it's like, "Oh, okay, you don't want to listen? I got you." And then
Right,
you're like,
bet.
"Help me! What's going on? My life is upside. I've lost everything." And then like, "Yeah, I was trying to tell you."
Right.
5 years ago,
Before we got
5 months
here.
ago, before we got here, but you weren't trying to listen. Like, okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Now you're here. So now you're ready to listen to me now? Okay, let's go.
Right.
Like,
Right. So what was your personal experience with shadow work? Like how did it benefit you?
how it benefited me. Whew, well, once I started to understand, like, the thought process that I had around myself, around people, and I had to stop and look at how my behaviors and how I contribute to my own pain.
Yeah.
Because that's the
Accountability.
hard part. We always want to
I was
like
about to
play
say.
victim and say it's her fault, it's his fault, it's their fault. I'm this way. They done this to me. They
Mhm.
hurt me. Sure, I'm not saying that's not valid. People have hurt me, but at the same time, there are parts of it that I played in it that
Right.
caused my own pain.
Mhm.
Some places, relationships, I chose those people. I had to choose them. I had to get a relationship with them, right? So
Mhm.
like, I had to like own my own stuff and say I played a part in this. It's not just on
Right.
them, and
Yeah.
taking
The
ownership.
hard
And
truth.
that's hard to look in the mirror and say, hey, boo, that was on you.
Yeah.
All right.
It
That's hard to
is.
say, if that's
It
on you,
is.
boo. Like, you had
Uh-huh.
to play a part in this. You had to like own that. Like, we talk
Yep.
about how people misuse us, right? For example, they just use my kindness for weakness. And then you're like, yeah, they did. But you let them. You
Right.
allowed it, right?
Right.
People
Right.
just always take, 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 take. They never want to give. Well, yeah, they can ask all day long, but you don't have to say yes.
Mhm.
So you can't be
Yep.
mad that they
You
took when you
started
gave.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I have to own my part of the things that I have done in relationships, with just like romantic relationships, even with family members and friends, like how I played a part in the pain that I felt, right? And own myself.
Mhm.
And like it has to become more aware that way I can make better choices,
Mhm.
right? When I'm meeting new people, even when I'm trying to repair relationships, I can make better choices and not do the same things that cause me pain and also cause other people pain. That's the other part
Right.
of it. It's just
Yeah.
how we have hurt other people
Mhm.
in this, unhealthy ways of thinking and unhealthy ways of doing. We hurt ourselves and we hurt other people. So I have to own those things. And so now that I'm aware of how I can affect other people and how I impact myself, it helps me to make better decisions for myself, better decisions for my family, better decisions for the people I'm involved with in any
Right.
capacity. It helps me
Right.
slow down my response time, right? Even
Mhm.
when like doing all the programming, and trying to unlearn and reprogram,
Mhm.
I actually become more in tune, like with source, with spirit, with God. Like my intuition
Right.
is like all the charts, and I compare how I was 5, 6, 7 years ago, which
Mhm.
also helps with like manifestation, because like I have shorter, sometimes things come, not all the time. I'm not gonna say like I'm just
Yeah.
toss them out the wind like tomorrow, but things happen sometimes just that
It's a
quickly.
different.
I
It's a
listen,
different.
I
Yeah.
hear. When you tap
Mhm.
in and you hear, you execute
Mhm.
and do, like, there you go. So things
Yeah.
have happened just like that for me sometimes when I'm just like tapped in. I
Yeah.
can hear very clearly, I can execute very efficiently, and I can manifest things that I need to manifest, in
Right.
sometimes short periods of time. So it's
Right.
helped me become more aware of myself, helped me tap in, to source and spirit, and it's helped me
Mhm.
to manifest some of the things in my life that I've done, that may take people longer to do.
Right. I know me personally, it changed me drastically. Drastically.
Hmm.
I know, I know, like, I was doing my readings and stuff and all of that, and I kind of tried to skip shadow work. I always was like, oh, we'll deal with that later. I'm that person that was sweeping stuff underneath the rug
Hmm.
and just explode. And I noticed after shadow work, I'm allowed to, like you said, kind of stop and like be like, okay, like let's kind of dig into this instead of just reacting and just going off. And even spiritually, that's why I said I feel like it's step number one because there were some things that happened to me that it forced me into universe was like, oh, you want to skip these steps? Okay, well, and I mean it was hitting me like I had, I attract good and bad entities honestly, and the bad ones they were pulling stuff, they were pulling it out, so it made me like okay, let
Hmm.
me. And my gifts got stronger. They got stronger, and and I started
Yep.
attracting more good things. And like you said, even the manifestation is like scary on point. Like I don't. It's just this. It's so calm and peaceful. Like okay, you're able to look at the learning side of everything. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know. I think it's scary, but it's so worth it. It's beautiful. I ain't gonna say scary. It's emotional. It's very emotional.
And what I
So,
have seen too, it helps me become like more compassionate to other people.
oh yeah,
Because
oh yeah.
you see, like, okay, I see where that person is because I may have been there, or I see like they struggle with something. That's them not responding to me personally. That's them
Mhm.
reacting to their own
Oh
triggers and
yeah.
traumas,
Oh
right?
yeah. You're able to see
It's
things from
it's
a completely different perspective.
Now, I'm be honest and say I'm not always like that, because sometimes
No,
they may
but
trigger
nobody's
me and hit from
perfect.
my own shadows. But
Yeah.
I know
Mhm.
it helped me to have more compassion for people and say,
Mhm.
okay, let me step back. You like chill out. Like they're
Right.
dealing with some stuff. Let
Uh-huh.
them deal with that. And
Right.
it kind of helps me not to respond. No, it helps me not to react,
Right.
right? I can respond to them without reacting to
Right.
them, which could be hurtful, more hurtful, and could keep that whole spiral of emotions going, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can't grow if you don't set the room to grow. You're just talking at each other at that point.
Right.
But let's see. Oh, well that was our that brings us to the next question that somebody asked. Is shadow work scary and can it be done wrong? Is that a thing?
So, oh, that's a good question. Is it scary? And the answer for me is yes and no. It's for me, but I would say mostly no, because it's unfamiliar, but it's not scary. That's what makes it scary, because it's
Yeah.
unfamiliar. We're working in a
Hmm.
place that we're moving out of our familiar zone. I don't like to say
Right.
comfort zone, because comfort zone ain't never really comfortable. If we being honest, it's just
You ain't
what
lying.
we're familiar with is what we know, right? But it's never really
Right.
comfortable. So
Hmm.
we're moving out of a familiar place, a familiar zone, right? And so there is going to be some resistance. There's going to be lots of resistance. And so it can feel scary, especially to your ego. Because remember, ego is driving the boat, right?
Hmm.
Ego
Yep.
is like the thing in charge that is hiding all the shadows. And so when
Right.
you come in saying, let's move you out the way a little bit, so the shadows, you're like, what you doing? Why,
Right.
why, what are you doing? Why are we doing this? That's not what
Hmm.
I know. Like, my job is to keep you safe,
Right.
right? So
Right.
if you're doing something that feels unsafe, unfamiliar, it feels like it's unsafe. So it's like, what are you doing? No,
Hmm.
we're not doing that. And so ego will give you some resistance, and you'll feel that struggle. And it may look like you said, avoiding it, like, I don't want to do that, right?
Uh-huh.
And so a lot of people, it may feel scared because it's an unfamiliar space, and it's
Right.
a very vulnerable space.
Yes.
And
Yes.
vulnerability is something that we struggle with, and we as a
Hmm.
human race struggle with at this point in
Yes.
our evolution, with
Yeah.
vulnerability.
Hmm.
And so
And you
you
gotta
get
be
vulnerable,
open
you
and
being
honest.
honest with yourself, being with other people. It's like,
Hmm.
whew, this hurt,
Right.
So,
Right.
so that's what makes it feel, I guess, scary. But it's not really like scary in a sense of the other misconceptions. The other misconceptions, like, oh, it's dealing with like evilness and
Right.
because
Right.
we hear shadows, we automatically think of like darkness, and
Yeah.
darkness
Yeah. And
is
it's nothing. That's not the case at all. At all.
right, and darkness is like, it's associated with bad,
Hmm. Hmm.
evil,
Hmm.
hurtful. And so we hear shadows, we think about all these other connotations of those words and other
Right.
associations of words, and they were like, oh, like that's scary. It
Right.
sounds scary.
Right.
Like, I wish
Yeah.
shadows were like, I wish it was a different word, because when you
Yeah.
automatically hear it, it sounds
Yeah.
scary. It
Cause I
does.
I know I had a girl reach out to me and she's like, I know when we first started talking about shadow work, I was like, like what is that? Like and then like now she's like in it and she's growing and it's just a beautiful thing for real, for real. You see people start becoming themselves and growing and just choosing better
Mm-hmm.
for themselves. It's a beautiful thing.
And so, like, the
So
other part I wanted to add, though, is because you
yeah.
asked the question, can it be done wrong, right? So I
Yes.
know somebody asked is it Jamaica Foster asked, is journaling the best way to start? So journaling about your feelings is a great way to get started. However, I have an issue with a lot of the journal prompts that I see online. And like, my clients will like say the same thing to me as well when we talk about some of the things that they find online, is that the only issue with those prompts is you get to write the answers to these questions, and so you're digging up all this stuff, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
usually most prompts I see deal with trauma, and
Yeah.
I was do the caveat and say shadow work is not all about trauma. First
Right.
and foremost, as only
Right.
a portion of it, but it's not
Right.
all of it. And most prompts I see deal with like the traumas that you've experienced in your life. So you dig up
Mm-hmm.
all this traumatic stuff, which activates all these uncomfortable emotions.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know what to do with it. You know, these prompts sometimes can have you digging up all this stuff, putting up all these emotions, and then you feel stuck. Now I've done all this and put all this up. I'm a hot mess, feeling all these things, feeling all of the things, and I don't know how to process it. I don't know what to do with it, right? So to answer Jamaica's question, journaling can be a good place if, I would say, start with identifying and talking about your emotions specifically.
Right.
I wouldn't start with the prompts you see online. I will start with your emotions that you're feeling, like journal how you're feeling, checking in with yourself. Because remember, shadow work is all about self-awareness and feeling all of the emotions and not suppressing any of them, allowing yourself to feel all of them. And so journaling about the emotion that you felt or are feeling in that moment and why. And being able to self-reflect on those emotions would be a good place to start. I would also say grounding. Having some good grounding practice is also a good way to start because you're going to need them. When you start putting up all these emotions that you're not used to feeling, you got to have some stuff in place that you know that you can go to ground yourself and bring you back to center. Because that's what happens with those journal prompts. They putting all this stuff out and then a hot mess, not knowing, they're unsure of themselves, right? They feel unsafe, insecure, and they don't know what to do. They don't have these practices to bring them back to center. Right.
That's a good point.
And like the other things that I struggle with when I see them and I hear them are like words like looking at shadow work as fixing myself, or saying shadow work is getting rid of my toxic traits, or my flaws, or my negative traits, or the bad things about me, because shadow work is all about accepting all of you. When you start using words like toxic, like flawed, like negative, bad, evil, dark parts of me, that's already putting you in a place of judgment. And shadow work is about accepting all of who you are and not labeling anything as good or bad, evil, love and light, darkness, like none of that. This is all parts of me. And you're discovering how these things were developed in you and doing from like a non-judgmental place, but not so much as labeling, these are my flaws, I need to get rid of them, I need to fix me, because nothing is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with anyone. We've just developed these unhealthy ways of thinking, unhealthy ways of doing. And I will caveat that to say that these things were once acceptable for us. They helped us in the past. These are survival tactics. These things we've learned that help us survive, and now they're not helping us anymore. That's why they're uncomfortable and have these ill effects now. But they helped us at some point in life. That's why we start to do them and think that way and act that way, because they helped us. They helped us meet some kind of need. Yes, we've learned, like it helped us subconsciously, that it can help us meet some kind of need. And now we're learning that's not working for me anymore. My needs are still not getting met. And so shadow work is looking at all those thought processes and all those actions that we used to use or currently use to try to get needs met that are not working for us. So that we have to actually create new ways of thinking and being in order to have our needs met in healthy ways. So kind of get all that stuff out of your mind. To change the vocabulary. We're not using the word fixing, flaws, darkness, negative, bad, toxic. Like that's how you start shadow work wrong. When you start saying, I'm doing my shadow work so I can fix myself. Because you're already saying something's wrong with me. So that's already self-hate. And shadow work is all about self-love, right? Self-acceptance.
Because before you can get to that stage, that releasing, like you said, acceptance is important. And I think a lot of times people confuse acceptance with like you said, judgment. You know what I'm saying? Like acceptance is not judgment. And, that's a very good point. Like acceptance means you don't have an opinion about it. You accept it for what it is, like. So it's like that balance, that middle ground, like you said. Good point. So let's see. So what's the best way to start shadow work? Since we journaling and stuff,
about the heavier grounding practices, right? And I never really recommend specific ones because it's always individual to the person, right? So examples of grounding practices could be like running your hands underwater. There's
Yep.
some people that like warm water is a grounding practice for them. Walking barefoot in the grass, hugging
Mhm.
trees,
Yeah.
meditations, yoga,
Mhm.
prayer. Um,
Mhm.
what else? Some other things people do. Creative play, art,
Yeah.
music.
Singing.
Those are grounding
Yeah.
practices for some people. So it depends on you. So I would say, if you're new to this, I would say experiment. You can do a Google search for like grounding practices and just you'll get a slew of them and start
Mhm.
practicing. See what brings you to center, what calms you. Like
Right.
for
Right.
me, like I said, running my hands in the water is good for me. EFT is an emotional freedom technique. It's like a tapping that works for me.
Huh.
Yoga is good for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes if I'm really like in the tizzy, I'll like take my shoes off, go walk outside on my lawn for a little bit, sit outside, get out into some sun, water, sitting near water. Even if I
Mhm.
put my hands in it, sitting near water is centering for me. So I would say start with your grounding practices.
Oh
Learn
yeah.
those because you're gonna need them no matter what you're doing, where you are in your journey. You're
Yeah,
gonna
that's
need these
true.
practices.
I
All
think
right.
my
So
favorite was
that,
running and getting in the shower. That was my favorite grounding, getting in the shower. That's after each like shadow work session and stuff I would do, I brought up all those emotions. I'm not gonna say I accepted it that day, like I
right,
accepted that day. So in order
right.
for me to release it for that day until I was ready to go
Mm-hmm.
back to that, that's when I would, after my meditations or whatever, I would, hop in the shower and we wash that off.
Yes. And I'm
Yeah,
glad you
so
mentioned that you may not have it that day because acceptance may not always happen in that one session at one time. It
mhm.
can take time. So
Oh
I'm glad
yeah.
you mentioned that as well. Like you brought it up and it's like, okay, I've identified it. Acceptance may not happen today just because I identified it. That may take
Hmm.
some time for me to process to get to a point of, okay, this is the shadow. I'm accepting the shadow. This is the
Right.
pattern that I've
Right.
identified or the pain I've caused someone else, the pain I've caused myself,
Hmm.
whatever. It may take you some time to get to a point of accepting it. But yeah, I'm glad
Hmm.
you mentioned that as well.
Yeah. And
So yeah,
I'm
I was
sorry.
gonna say your grounding practices, and then of course, like I said, working with identifying your emotions because we tend to always want to feel the light emotions, the
Yeah.
happy, the joy. To talk about you
Hmm.
feeling sad, to say you're feeling lonely, to say you're feeling depressed, to say you're even angry or I'm
Hmm.
enraged. Some people
Hmm.
they feel very uncomfortable with admitting those things or
Yeah.
even showing those things, and so they will, you know, press them down, right? Suppress them in their bodies because emotions don't
Right.
go nowhere. Just because you don't want to
Right.
like respond to them or show them doesn't mean that they've escaped you. They just get trapped in your body,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
get
And they'll come
this.
up
They call it
again.
you get they call it dis-ease in the body. You'll feel it.
Yeah.
It'll just manifest in physical form until you say I'm ready to deal with it. I said the universe will
Exactly.
nudge you, then they'll drag you. You start feeling your
Exactly.
body. You start getting dragged in your
Exactly.
body and weighed
And
down in your body by emotion that you're not
yes,
releasing.
it's a consistent practice. Consistent.
Hmm.
It's not like, oh, okay, I addressed these in childhood. We still got the rest of our life and maybe even tomorrow. Like, so yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Because we
Let's
keep living. Like just
see.
because we are on a spiritual journey does not mean that everything will be love and light. It won't be because we're still having a human experience.
Right. Yep. Yep.
So we're
Yep.
always going
Yep.
to be encountering things that affect us and cause us to have these uncomfortable emotions that we
Hmm.
have to address via shadow work, right?
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what made you get into wanting to help people with shadow work and being a healer.
So it's a long story. So I'll kind of make it short as I can. So about 5 years ago, I started doing these things called hot topics on my
Okay.
Facebook page, and they're really related to like relationship questions and how
Mhm.
people operate inside of relationships.
Mhm.
And people actually were vulnerable enough to answer honestly. And I realized that there was a space for this type of conversation because we don't see a
Mhm.
lot of that happening in our
No.
personal lives or even really online, right?
Yes,
So the
no.
first time I asked a question, I wasn't doing it to like really engage, but just kind of question I had, and people started to talk back to me, and I did it again, and I did it again. And people actually want to talk about these things. So I
Yeah.
started asking all these questions. I made it a thing to like, ask these types of hot topic questions about relationships. And then I started to push it a little bit further because I realized that a lot of how we respond to these types of questions, there's the type of beliefs that we have. And sometimes we don't question the beliefs that we have. That goes to the idea of like the conditioning. That's
Right.
just what you're supposed to do. This is what a wife's supposed to do. This is what a girlfriend's supposed to do. This is what a husband's supposed to do. This is what a marriage is supposed to look like. And I started pro people, but why? But
Right.
why? That's how it's supposed to be. Who said that?
Mm-hmm.
Because we will internalize these belief systems from people in society without ever questioning them. And so we get to a
Just went
place
with
of
it.
being
You're
just,
right.
hmm?
I said we just went with it. You're right.
Right. And we don't question it. So we become these like robots, like just on autopilot, believing what we've been told to believe. And I start to like start probing people on their beliefs.
Yeah.
Right. And then people start coming, oh, you like my therapist. So people start getting in my inbox, asking me these questions about relationships and what should I do? And I've been studying on my own as well. And people start calling me their therapist. And I'm like, I'm not a therapist. It's like, but you should be a therapist. And I'm not really trying to go back to school for therapy to be a therapist, like not therapy, but psychology to be a therapist. I would love to explore that as a profession. However, it's just not, that's my path right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He was like, but you're really like a coach. You should be a coach. You should be a relationship coach. And I was like, oh, I'm just talking to people. I'm just providing the space for people to talk and for me to give advice. I don't really think it's a thing, and people kept calling me their coach, calling me their therapist. And I was like, well, let me explore what that would look like. What would that look like for me if I explore this path? And so I actually started out in coaching as a relationship coach.
Okay.
I did. And the longer I did and the more I studied, I realized that every relationship that we have with other people is only a reflection of the relationship we have with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So I was going to say, how can I fix this person? They're like messing up my relationship. How can I fix this person messing up my marriage? It's like, but let's look at you. And that's where my practice always starts with the person. And so I kind of shifted out of focusing on a relationship and moving it more into the person.
Right.
If you want to, yeah. If you want to improve your relationships, you got to improve the relationship that you have with yourself. That's what we call like emotional intelligence, right? Being self-aware, aware of yourself and aware of your emotions and understanding why this person is triggering you in that way. So like you and I can meet the same person. And I can go in like, man, she was a straight bitch. And you be like, really? I thought she was nice. I'm like, nah, did you hear what she said? X, Y, Z. And you're like, yeah, I heard her, but I didn't think she meant that. And we can experience the same person at the same time in two different ways.
Yeah.
And that's our own stuff.
Yep.
Have two different perspectives on the same experience. And it's like, wait a minute, like what's going on inside of me that I saw the fact that she was a bitch, but you saw that she was a nice person, right? And so we had to like check ourselves. When we're in relationships with people and they're bothering us or like triggering us, it's like, check yourself. Let's look inside. What's happening in your head and your heart that has you feeling this way? Right. So that's kind of how I moved from relationship to shadow work, because that's kind of the work I was already doing in relationship coaching, but I'm calling it what it actually is now. It's shadow work.
Yeah. You like, hold on, let's start at the beginning.
Let's start at the beginning. Exactly. This is a symptom of another problem. Let's get to the problem and not the symptom.
Before we get there. Like
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to backtrack a little bit. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So how do you like? I know there's several different methods to do shadow work. What are some of the different methods, and how do you know what's the best method for you or that person?
So there are different methods. Like there's therapy. People don't know that therapy is a form of shadow work. Dream analysis is another form of shadow work, because a lot of times our subconscious will give us signals of things that we should consciously work on. So I'm not saying dream analysis is all shadow work is, but it can give you some insight of what you need to work on in your conscious life. And so if you take a dream journal and not identify, but just kind of take a tally of the things that you've been dreaming, like make that part of your morning ritual. And with the things that you are dreaming about, you might start seeing patterns.
Right.
of things that are
Yeah.
popping up that you are may need to consider in your, your
Mm-hmm.
conscious life, and dealing with some shadows there.
Mm-hmm.
Divination is also another way that you can do shadow work through, like scrying, tarot. But like I said before earlier, I would say wait until you've actually like gotten good into understanding what shadow work is before you
Yeah,
deal with
I agree.
divination
I agree
with
because
shadow
I don't
work.
think
So
people realize they open themselves up to so much when you start getting into the tarot and all of that. So you want to be prepared for
and
whatever can
yeah,
happen.
and also
You
it can
want to
be
be ready.
confusing because like if you're not a tarot reader already, if you're not someone who uses pendulums already, if you don't do these types of divination
Yeah,
styles or
that's
tools
true.
already, you're trying to
That's
learn that
true.
and do shadow work at the same time. You can
Hmm.
overwhelm yourself trying to do the
Uh-huh.
things because you
Hmm.
haven't mastered either one.
Uh-huh. But energy matters too. You have to be able to not involve yourself in that person's situation or that question or that reading because your energy can spill out into that and now they talking about you and they calling you out and it ain't got nothing to do with them, you know?
Right. And then you
So
mess around, get triggered, and you leave a reading, understand what's going on with you. Right.
yeah, you telling them something that was for you, you know? So
Right.
yeah,
So like
yeah.
that's another form. Past life regression sessions. When you deal with that past life, so that's also be a
Yeah.
form of
Uh-huh.
shadow work as well. Of course, coaching, mentorship is another form of shadow work.
Right.
And I strongly suggest what if you're starting brand new to work with someone, and only because you will not like you will experience resistance. Like I said before, you experience resistance when you start shadow
Right.
because your ego is like, we ain't doing that, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when you start this process and you're doing it by yourself, you're gonna stay on the surface,
Right.
and you're going to fool yourself to thinking that you're doing like you're really digging, when really just kind of like moving stuff out of the way a little bit, brushing
Yeah.
stuff to the side, but you're
Yeah.
not really like
Yeah.
digging and opening that thing up and really getting into it. But you're like, oh, I answered this question today. Yay me! I did
Hmm.
my shadow work today, right?
Right.
I wrote
Right.
down the saddest day I've ever had. Yay me! I've done my shadow work today, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of how those questions fall. Like, what's the thing that made you the saddest? What's the saddest day you've ever had? What fear do you
Yeah.
have? Oh, I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of being alone,
Yeah.
and leave it at that, right?
Right. And it's you gotta keep going.
You gotta
Why?
look a little bit deeper,
Why?
dig a little bit deeper than
Why?
like why. Let's talk about why, right? But
Hmm.
so that's why I say I would follow up with a coach, a mentor, a therapist to help
For
you dig a
sure.
little bit deeper and where that comes from, and ask the
Hmm.
follow up questions, because you start on your own, you don't know the follow up questions to ask yourself, and
Right.
oftentimes your ego will keep you from asking those deeper questions
Yeah.
because they don't want you to venture too far out of that familiar
Right.
zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to go
That's the
there. And
truth.
so you'll cause you sometimes you'll say it sometimes like, I don't want to talk about this thing,
Hmm.
right? But you have somebody there pushing you. No, we're talking about this thing right now, right? And somebody's going to hold you accountable,
Right.
right? And not
Yep.
let you take
That's
the
true.
easy way out to go and say, oh, I'm not going to do this. I'll worry about this next year, next month, next. No, they're like,
Hmm.
nah. Like, you're
Yep.
here, you're present. Let's
Hmm.
do this right now, and push you and lovingly encourage you to go a little bit deeper into this thing and support you as you process these emotions and these
Right.
concepts and this conditioning.
Hmm. Yep.
So those are like different ways that you can start shadow work. Those are my recommendations.
Right.
And which one is the best for you? It's hard to say what's best for you. It really is hard to say because it's
That's
personal to
fair.
every person.
Right. That's fair.
Yeah. I would say start with if you have dealt with actual abuse, physical, mental, sexual, of any kind, I will always say start with therapy.
Hmm.
Get
Yep.
a trained professional who is trained in dealing with abuse to help you process that,
Oh yeah,
whether it
because
happened in
it can be
childhood
hard once
or
you get in
adulthood.
there. It can
Right.
get hard to know the direction, and you get stuck, like you said earlier. You get stuck, and that's not a good place to be. That wasn't the
Right. So if
purpose.
you experience any kind of abuse, start with a therapist. And also I
Yep.
want to say a little thing about trauma, because when we hear trauma, we automatically assume we mean abuse.
Right.
Trauma and abuse are not the same. Abuse is a form of trauma, but there are several different types of trauma. Because I
Hmm.
see people say, oh well, I didn't have no trauma. I don't have to do shadow work,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is a
Oh,
misconception.
okay.
Yeah, you're like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, sure. But we have
Mhm.
all experienced some form of trauma. It may not be abuse. It may not
Right.
be as pronounced as abuse looks, but we have all experienced some form of trauma. It could be
Oh yeah.
subtle. It could be
Mhm.
over time,
Mhm.
and we don't automatically realize that.
Right.
So I want to put that out there as well. That trauma and abuse are not the same. Abuse
Right.
can be a form of trauma, but there are several different forms of trauma
Right.
that we could experience in our life that does not involve being physically or mentally or verbally assaulted.
Right. Right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. Whew. All right. So what I know we talked about some of the methods that you can do to start on shadow work, but what are some
Hmm.
of the services that you offer?
So I offer one-on-one coaching, I offer
Hey,
group
huh?
coaching, and I offer courses, and I also offer guides. So on my website now, I have Shadow Work 101, which is like 33 frequently asked questions about shadow work. We covered a few of them here, but there are a few more we haven't talked about that's in there. I have Shadow Work 201, which includes a playlist that I had a friend of mine put together for me that helps you to start to feel and also
Okay.
identify those uncomfortable emotions and how to unpack
Mhm.
those. I offer one-on-one coaching, hourly sessions, or you can do packages. I also do group coaching. That's my baby this year. I started
Yeah.
it last year, but it's really like taking off this year is group
Yeah.
coaching. And so each month we focus on a different aspect of shadow work.
Okay.
So
Okay.
last month we focused on chakras and our energy to deal with the shadow aspects of some of our chakras,
Mhm.
and helping to balance our energy, right? You remember we
Yeah.
talked about your energy, how that's important.
Right.
And then this month we're talking about, oh, my mind went blank. Oh, boundaries. Shadow
Yeah.
work around setting boundaries, because that's a shadow. If you are unable to set
Mhm.
boundaries, or you have a hard time setting boundaries, or you keep these emotional walls up, that
Yeah.
is about, I mean, that's a form of a shadow that we need to address. So this month
Mhm.
we're focusing specifically on shadow work around boundaries. Next month we're focusing on shadow work around vulnerability and self-love, because
Mhm.
sometimes we struggle with loving ourselves because we are so giving to others. So we want to
Right.
people please
Right.
so that we get
Mhm.
needs met, or we're unable to feel or express those uncomfortable emotions and be
No. Yeah.
vulnerable. So working
Mhm.
on that next month, and then the month after that, we're doing a decluttering of our home, our heart, and our head.
Yes. Yes.
Because physical clutter is only a manifestation of our mental, emotional,
Yes.
spiritual clutter. So we're
Yes.
doing all of those things in November. And other topics that
Mhm.
I address, we do shadow work around manifestation, shadow work around limiting beliefs, shadow work around love, self-love, and relationship love. We do shadow work around money and our relationship with money. So
Yes.
those are some topics that I address once a month, well, not once a month, but one topic a month. And we use it the
Yes.
whole month. So I have
And I feel like
trainings.
that's something that a lot of people, like you said, though, they don't realize, like you said about trauma, like it's so many levels to this. Like it's so many levels, like so many. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy. Like I don't know, it's just like a whole new world. That's really the best way to
It's
put
a
it.
whole
Like
whole new level of awareness. Yep.
yes, yes, yes. It makes a difference for sure, for sure. I'm interested in the group one though. That sounds fun.
Okay. I'll see the information for it. And anybody else,
Mhm.
I guess I can type it in here.
I was about to say yeah, and pin it in the comments so it's
Okay.
at the top automatically.
Type that in. And then I also have like on-demand courses on my course platform as well. I have some courses on love languages, on attachment styles. We talked about trauma and how it shows up in childhood and it impacts us. So attachment styles talks
Mhm.
about how we were raised and how we were brought up and how it impacts our relationships and how we
Right,
bond or not bond with other people.
right.
So this is my
And even our
course
fears,
platform.
all of it.
Hmm?
I said even our fears, all of it.
All
Let
of
me
that,
see.
yes.
And there we go. Now it'll be at the top when yep. It's just that yep, there it is.
And then I'm gonna put my coaching website on there as well. There we go. That's my course platform and my coaching site. So yeah, courses, coaching, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and a couple of resources. I have a shop on my website as well. You can see the Shadow Work 101, Shadow Work 201. And once or twice a year, usually once a year, I'll do my Shadow Work Intensive. That's an 8-week course that gives you a great overview of what shadow work is, the history of shadow work, but then it also takes you through a specific practice that I use with my clients to introduce them to shadow work and leads them through techniques to begin their shadow work journey. So I do that one once a year. So it's 8 weeks, and there's an application for that because I only pick about 8 to 11 people per cycle. So
okay, and that's the 8 weeks per 8 weeks.
That's for the 8-week one. But the group coaching I do year round. There's different topics around shadow work each month. And so that one I do 3 trainings a month. Then I also have my Facebook group where all the assignments, because I give you work. Y'all do work. We ain't just sitting there watching me do lives and sit on my Zoom calls. For group coaching, y'all doing the work. I'm teaching y'all, and then I'm making y'all apply it. So there are daily and weekly assignments that you're responsible for completing. You have accountability partners in the group as well as me as a coach. So it's a combination of coaching, live trainings, assignments. You have your accountability partner as well in the group with you. So
right. So you got a little
something for small.
Everybody. Something for everybody.
Yes. Get in where you fit in. I got a lot of stuff for y'all.
Well, I'm glad I got to talk to you and you dropped some gems on this. I learned some stuff like the dream interpretations and stuff. I didn't know that. Like there's a lot of things that I learned, and even the psychology part. I'm so happy I got to talk to you though. I appreciate it. I did too.
Thank you.
But anyway, you have a good one. I'll be in contact with you.
All right. See y'all later. Thanks for joining everyone who's on the live. I appreciate y'all. Y'all can send me a friend request and jump in my inbox. I love to chat with everybody. And I will talk to y'all later.
She's tagged in the title of the video and on all the flyers and stuff too. So
yep, perfect.
All right. Bye, y'all. Thank you.